How's it going, guys, and welcome back for another Cinema 4D tutorial. Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using some of our basic modeling skills inside Cinema 4D, and we're going to be modeling the Town Hall 10 from Clash of Clans, the app, the game. I'm sure everybody knows of it. But, so I just modeled this one decently quickly, and we'll be going over and we'll be modeling it, and then we'll throw some textures on it. And yeah, so it's pretty much basic forms and stuff, but we will hop right on in to a new project. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab a cube and we're going to come to the top view. Now, if you have played the game whatsoever, you know that the Town Hall 10 is, I'm going to use these squares as kind of like markers or tiles within the game. So a Town Hall is 3 by 3. Each one of these squares is 100 centimeters. So I'm just going to make this 300 centimeters and 300 on the X and the Z. And now we get a 3 by 3 tiled cube. So we have our cube, and that's decent in height. I'll leave the height at about 200 for now. I think that's pretty good. All right. So our first step is our roof. Here, I'll pull up a Town Hall 10 on images here. They're all going to be super zoomed out. Alright, well, we'll use this basic one as our reference picture. So we have our square. It's got a little roof on it. It's got these two little turrets. It's got its main little spot here with this grate. Some lava flowing off the side. It's got these chains. So we have our basic form for our cube right now. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start making this low-pitched kind of roof. So we have our cube with inside Cinema 4D that just disappeared on us. All right, and to make this roof, it's pretty simple. All we're going to do is, let's say our door is on this x-axis, this red axis right now. So if we come to the Z, there we go. If we come to the Z axis and add a segment, then it puts a line right down on the Z axis. You can access seeing these lines by going to display and then garage shading. It makes it a lot easier for modeling. So now that we have one line going down the middle, we're going to go ahead and make this editable. Now what that's going to do is it's going to let us start to modify the lines, the points, the polygons of our object. So come to the line mode here on the side, or edges. And then we're going to select this one line that we put on the top. So we can come into any mode. We can leave it in all the modes if you want. But as we drag this line up, now we're going to start getting a slope to our roof. Now in the picture, it's a very low slope. You only see it from this angle, so you can't tell exactly how low the slope is, but we're just going to guess, and we're going to say something like this. I moved, so it's not too high, but it's a low slope. So now that we have the slope of our roof, we're going to switch to our polygon mode. And we're going to highlight our two polygons by shift-clicking both of them. Or you can use the live selection tool, and you can just click and drag over both of them. Just make sure the only select visible elements is checked on, or else when you go to select the roof tiles, you'll also be selecting the two polygons in the back. So now that we have these two clicked, if we right-click and go to Extrude, now what we're going to do is we're going to start creating that extra thick part for our roof. The one thing you want to make sure when you're using Extrude for this part is that this preserve groups box is checked, because if it's not checked, it's going to extrude it as two separate polygons, so there's a line down the middle. But if we keep that checked, it's going to extrude it as one polygon straight up, and that's what we want. So I'm just going to extrude this up a little bit, give it a little bit of thickness to our roof, something like that. You can see in the picture, it's not overly thick. We'll go with this. Nothing too intense. Alright, so now we have our extra little polygons here that we've created for our roof. On the roof of our town hall, it sticks past our edge just the tiniest bit here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create that little hangover of the roof. So there's a nice little tool with inside Cinema 4D that makes your life a lot easier. If you come into the select options and go loop selection, or you can click U and then L, will also bring it up for you. This lets you select rings or loops of polygons, or whatever you are on at the time, but I'm on the polygon mode, so it's loops of polygons. So if I want to create this ring that we just created around our roof, I'm just going to highlight the corner here, because if I go in the center, it's going to think it's this way. You can highlight almost anywhere on these edges or these lines that we created, and it's going to select the loop. So if we just click that, it selects the loop all the way around. And we just want to go back to that extrude tool one more time and just extrude it out a little bit. Nothing too much, because it doesn't stick past that much. I might do a little bit more. I might extrude it to about 6 centimeters. You know what, well, that barely moved it, so let's do 8. Excuse me. We'll do 8 centimeters there. So we have this little lip for our roof now. Perfect. So the next thing with the roof is it has these curved sides here for the roof that comes down the side of our town hall. So we'll go ahead and we'll tackle making those. Now, for this part, we need this part to come straight down here. So I'm going to highlight this side, and I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to shift click that polygon as well. So now we have those two selected. I'm just going to extrude this a little bit more to about there. Pretty much what I'm doing is I'm extruding it the width that I think this little drop down part of our roof is going to be, which is roughly the same thickness as our roof is. So the polygons do come up a little bit, so I'm just going to drag this down a tiny bit so that the line continues. Perfect. So we got that. Everything is nice and good here. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come into our right view. It's default on right view or your left view, but the view that you can see the front or the back of our object. We're going to grab our live selection tool, and we're going to uncheck now this only select visible elements. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select this point, which is actually going to select both the front and the back point. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now I'm going to come into the scale tool, and I'm just going to scale these up a little bit till they're very close to 90 degrees up and down. It's very difficult to get them perfect. The easiest way to get them absolutely perfect is if you just go on one side and highlight them, move it till it's about 90 degrees. Go to the other side, highlight it. It's probably a little bit faster than trying to get it really, really close with the scaling tool. There's an extra little point right here, and I don't know what it's doing. Okay, that's from get it. I get it. Alright, so now we want to make the lips coming down. So we're going to come back into our polygon mode, and I'm going to select both of these polygons underneath our roof. And we're just going to right click, we're going to come back into our extrude, and we're going to extrude down about 31 centimeters on the offset. Nothing too crazy here. And now we just want to position this so this whole edge comes down in one nice straight line. So we're just going to deselect one of these sides. And we are going to rotate this so it's about perfectly flat, about that 90 degrees. So we get our move tool is easier to use. And now we can just position this roof with this this side now has this 90 degree, it's almost a 90 degree bend, it's coming off the side, but it has this nice flat side. So we're going to go ahead and do it on the other side by selecting that polygon on the bottom. Come into our right view, go over here, we are going to rotate this one again. An easy way to see if it's flat or not is just to use the grid on the page. You can get a pretty close estimate. And now we got a nice, perfect. So now both of our sides of our roof have our lips coming down. All is good. But on here, on our little preview that we're on our reference picture, we can see it has these rounded edges for our the roof, and well, everything pretty much has these rounded-ish edges. But especially on these sides, like in our program here, we have this very sharp edge, and we want to round those sides. So again, Cinema 4D has a wonderful tool that makes this very easy. Just come into your edge mode or your line mode and select our two lines on the sides here. Right click and come down to the bevel. Now, the one thing that we want to do before we click and drag is we want to change the subdivisions to 5. Now when you set it to 5, it might change for you or it might not. It just depends on what your offset was set to. But my offset was already set to 10, so it offsetted to 5. So if I just click undo, this is what you guys have so far. And then if you click and drag, you can set the size of the size of your rounded on your edges. I'm just going to go to 13. I just don't want to go over this second line into the next polygon because that'll really screw things up. The only other thing here is these edges on the front and stuff are also rounded. So we're going to come back to our loop selection tool. And we are going to make sure that's checked. And we want to round these edges here. Just make sure those are not selected. We want to round that one. These ones down here, not those ones. We can round these edges as well. So we're just going to select all the edges that we want to round with our little bevel trick that we just did, which is this one as well. Come to the back, select the same polygons. Just going to do this quickly. You just want to make sure you don't have any extra polygons that we don't need selected, because they might create an issue later on if something like that happens. Alright, we just need to deselect and select that one. Perfect. So now we have all our edges that we want to give a nice little rounding to. So we're just going to right click, bevel, and we're just going to click and drag very slightly to give a nice little rounded edge. So if I go ahead and render this out, we have this nice rounded corner, this rounded corner, and our base. You can delete the Fong tag if you want, which is it's going to show all of the corners more easily. Or you can keep it, but I'm just going to delete it because in here you can actually kind of see some of the polygon corners and stuff, and I just like how it looks a little bit better. All right, so we're starting to get the basic shape of the base part, this part of our town hall. So notice around the bottom as well, we have kind of a extruded corners. I'm not sure if that's just the corner or the whole wall. Kind of looks like the whole wall has an extruded bottom around it, so we'll go ahead and we'll do that next. So if we come into the polygon mode and select our cube, just make sure nothing's selected. And we're going to come into any side view that you want. And we're just going to select loop/path cut. And what that's actually, let's do plane cut. That's going to be a little bit easier. What the plane cut is going to do is going to cut a straight line, pretty much using a plane object, and it's just going to use that as a knife, and it's going to cut right through our object. So all we need to do is choose the height. I'm thinking someplace around here. And once you click the first point, now this is where your second point is. So you can put it anywhere, but if you hold shift, it's going to snap it to the closest 90, 45, or 0 degrees. So in this case, we want 0. So if we just hold shift and click again, now we have our 2 points. Now if we just click escape, we have our cut. And it cut around the entire bottom of our object. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to the loop selection by doing U and then L. Now we're going to select the bottom. We're going to come to extrude. Now we're going to extrude it out to about what we think is extruded on the picture. It's a little bit more than what, it's about 15 centimeters. Now you may notice that it has this sloped edge to it. So we'll go ahead, UL, but this time go to your line selection and just select this top corner. So we can do one of two things. We can either simply come to the move tool and move this down, which is going to give us kind of somewhat of a slope. But this more looks like a rounded corner, almost. So we're going to go back to our bevel tool. And this time we're just going to go 1 on our subdivision. And now when we come back and bevel it, we have this this slightly rounded beveled edge. Perfect. It's coming along nicely. All right, so now what we got to do is let's just add the square for our top piece so that we have some reference for the little trim, all the little trim pieces on our town hall. So I'm going to come back into object mode or model mode, and I'm just going to add another square. Alright, so now our square is, we're going to set this to 50 and 50 to center it inside of our object. And we're just going to drag this up. And I'm going to make this about the height of this one about 75. So if I drag this one down, this first little edge is about the same height as our peak of our roof. So if we drag this down to about here, that is about the same height as the peak of the roof right here. It's hidden by this little trim piece that we're going to be making shortly, but that's about the same height that we got. So that we might need to make this a little bit bigger. It comes pretty close to the edges, this top part, and inside here it doesn't come very close to the edges, so we just want to make this to about, I'm going to do 250. I think that's a little bit more accurate, something like that, a little bit closer to the edge, like here and here. All right. So now let's go ahead and let's make this little trim piece. So this is going to be pretty simple. All we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste our top cube. We're going to drag it forward a little bit. And then we're just going to resize this cube to be much smaller. Set it to about 40 by 40. The height doesn't need to be nearly that much, maybe 30. Drag it up. It is narrower than it is long. So if I set this to about 35, maybe even 30. We'll do 30 by, we'll go 40 on the X, and then the Y and Z we'll do 30. That's looking pretty good. Might actually lower down the Y to about 25. We don't need it quite that high, and we just want this to be just the same height as our cube here. So roughly the same height. Doesn't need to be perfect. Let's add some nice little rounding on the corners. We'll just add a fillet of like 1 centimeter with 5 subdivisions, and that's going to give us this nice rounded edges here for our little trim piece. And now we have these two side pieces that kind of flare out as they go to the side. This is also quite easy. They kind of look flat. So, alright, so we're just going to copy and paste this little cube again. I'm just going to go ahead quickly. We're getting lots of cubes. You should always name. So I'm going to name our first polygon that we made as object. This one is going to be the tower. I'm going to call it because that's the base of our tower. And then I'm going to name this gold trim. And then this is going to be gold trim 2. And we're going to have one more. So we're going to come into our top view, reposition our little trim piece right at the corner here. So I lined up the axis lines with the fillet lines on the corners, so that now when I go to resize this, it's going to size down perfectly in center with the corner. I'm thinking 5 by 5 is a bit small. Maybe even 10 by 10. I think that's a bit better. It needs to be taller. Let's go about 35 because it has to go past on the top and past on the bottom. 35 might be a little extreme actually, so let's just lower this down to about 30. There we go. So we got our one little corner piece here, and if you come here, you notice they kind of get bigger as they go out. So if we make this editable, come into polygon mode and click on this back polygon. Now what we can do is we can come into our scale tool and we can just scale up a little bit. And now we get this getting a little bit bigger. We want it a little bit wider, something like that. I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. I'm going to rotate this 180 degrees. If you're holding shift while you rotate, it'll snap to those 10-degree increments. And now since this building is perfectly centered, if we look in the Z, right now it's at 64 centimeters. So if we want to set this on the exactly on the other corner, you can either set it manually or you can just go minus because it is on the other side. That did not work whatsoever. Alright, don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. What is going on with this thing? Alright, something went wrong there. Oh, I know what I did. Alright, I was rotating the polygon and not the actual object. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to gold trim 2. We're going to recopy that one, and in polygon mode, now we're going to rotate it 180. And I don't know what happened last time, so I'm just going to quickly drag this one down here. And set it right there. Now we got this nice little trim going on here. All's good. It does intersect into the roof quite a bit. So we can make these a little bit bigger, like something like that. And we can drag it in just so they're sticking past on the front. Something like that. Perfect. Now we just got to add some nice little rounded edges to this, so we'll come into line mode, select both of those, and with our live selection, we'll just go only visible elements off, and we'll just quickly select everything, just wave it around. It'll select all of our lines, whether we can see them or not. Right click, go to Bevel, set this back up to a higher number, and now we can do like 0.75 because this is such a small cube. You can even do 0.5 if you want, but it'll give it a nice rounded edge to our polygons there. Alright, so the trim piece looking good there in the front. We got our roof, we got our trim for the bottom. We are doing good now. This is might be a little bit long. It's already about half an hour now for this tutorial. I might just do this all in one video. It might be a longer video. Might do it in 2 videos. We'll have to see. Alrighty. So we'll finish the base. Actually, we'll finish the base in this video, and then we'll do the tower in the next video. How about that? Alright, so for the base, what do we got to do left? We have the trim around the doors. We got the chains. This little door coming out. We have some windows here. And that is about all we got to do left for the base. So let's go ahead and let's create these 2 little windows. This is nice and easy. Let's create a new cube. You know what I'm going to do here is actually first, before I start adding this cube, I'm going to select all our gold trim, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to go group objects, and now I'm just going to go gold trim. Simple. It's just going to group it all in one object, so I have it in there and we don't need to worry about. I'm just going to delete all the Fong tags off of them too, so that so we get that nice little kind of sharper corners, if you will. Alright, so now we have our cubes. We're going to use the Bool modifier to create these windows. So we're just going to resize these windows. They're not too big. It's tough to see on the angle, so we're going to have to kind of guess what looks good. They're almost shaped like this, and I'm just going to put them on the grid lines here. So I know it's hard to see, but there's one right here where the yellow arrow is, and then there's one right here. They're a little bit thicker than the rest. And we don't need them to be that insanely deep, so we can just back it off. And then we just want them to stick in a bit into the building. Now we're going to use the Bool. So if we come here and grab the Bool Modifier, we are going to drag our base in first, because we want whatever we put in next to be subtracted from our base. But now we have 2 cubes. An easy way, if you want to just add the cubes, is I believe you can put them in a group, or sometimes it just go connect and delete objects. And now I got both of them in one, and I just dropped that in there too. And make sure the cube is on the bottom, base is on the top, and it subtracts whatever these 2 cubes were. Perfect. So now that we got that, we can do out of 2 things. We can again shift click the whole thing and go connect and delete, and now we only have 1 polygon, and we can rename this base. So now that the windows are an actual part of the building and not just part of the modifier. And now we'll go ahead and do the door. Is because 2, you'll need to use lots of different objects to create door entrances and window entrances on the base of it. Because now we have the windows, and then we would have to add another one for the doors. So we're just going to connect and delete. So create 1 polygon, so we can do it again. So we're going to grab another cube, and this cube's for this project, guys. Drag it to the front. We are going to drag this 50 centimeters to the side so that it is centered. And we're going to create the hole for this door. So it almost comes all the way up to the peak. So we can say someplace around there. If we come to the front view, it's easier to see. And then we don't want it too wide. Maybe something like that. So let's do 120 on the Z axis for our door. And looks good. Looks good, looks good. So you can do 2 things here. We can either add a fillet now and drop this down to like 1 subdivision. Actually, what's probably the best thing to do is make this cube our door cube. I'm going to make it editable. I'm going to grab our 2 lines and I'm going to right click, going to go to Bevel, set this down to 0 this time because we don't want a line for the corner. We don't want this rounded at all, and we can just round this out like so to give it a nice edge, like so. Perfect. So we're gonna go grab another Bool. We're gonna throw the door cube and the base into our Bool object. Now we got this hole here for our door. Perfect. So once again, I'm just going to right click. I'm going to select all of those, connect and delete, and rename this base. So we got the base coming on here. We got the door. Perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to make these trim pieces for the front. More cubes, more cubes, more cubes. I'm going to center this with one of the lines here. Oop, a little bit too far. Just like that. Now we can select how wide we want the trim piece to be. I'm going to do about 30. And we don't need this so thick, so we'll do that 50 on the X, 20 on the Y, 30 on the Z. 1 second. All right, we're back, and let's finish this here. So we're just gonna kind of set this inside the doorway. So it's gonna be like some door trim. We need this to come about. We're going to set it so it's about even with the bottom of our thing and about halfway up our 45-degree corner there. I think that's looking pretty good. Now what we're going to do for this one is we're going to do the same thing that we did for our other cube. We're going to make it editable. We're going to come into the line option. Going to select the two front lines. Come into bevel here. Now we're just going to bevel about 9 centimeters. And then we can push this in till it is about the same as the bottom trim. It's pretty close there. So this is what we're going for. All right. Looks good. We're going to come back into our actual object mode. We're going to copy that one. We are going to move it over. So this one is centered with that doorway wall. Perfect. And then we're just going to copy and paste it again. Rotate it 90. And this is going to be our header up here. We're going to center it with that top edge. This top edge here. So I'm just going to put the our y-axis line, our green line on there. And we can even center it with our actual building. And then we can just use our scale tool and scale this as we need. We're going to actually bring these two a little bit bigger. These two side ones, we're going to make them a bit bigger so that they come about halfway into that top header one, because we want to put that corner trim that we see here in. So it looks a little messy right now, but this corner is going to be covered by the trim. And if we throw a floor in, you can't see anything sticking past. Just make this an all white material. Throw that on the floor. So that looks terrible right now, but if you do throw physical sky on there, ambient occlusion, global illumination, you can take your physical sky and you can pick the time of day. So I'm just going to shoot through the times, make the shadows come on the front. We can render this out quickly. Doesn't take too long, and we get this nice little look here. It looks better when you throw the white on the whole thing, but for now we're just going to leave it. Alright, so now you can turn it off while you're not using it, or else there'll be this pretty crazy shadow. Or you can just double click the top dot, and that turns the physical sky off in editor view, but when you go and render it, it's still enabled, which is the bottom dot. Alright, anyways, so we are going to come back to our trims. We got them positioned how we want them. Now we just got to make this corner piece here. Again, it's another cube. we're just going to bring this one out front because we need to mess around with this one a little bit. Alright, so we're going to make this one editable once you get it roughly this size. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to be scaling it bigger and smaller anyway. I'm going to grab the two bottom edges. Going to come into the scale tool. We're just going to bring them in till we get something like this so that they come in. And it doesn't need to be this tall, so we can actually shrink this down a little bit. Something like that. So we got a nice kind of triangle, cone-ish look here. And if we come to our edges, select our front edges because our back edges are going to be clipped into the wall. We come into the bevel. This one just has these nice little rounded corners. Actually has this one rounded as well. So, let's throw a button. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on this edge. That one there. And we're just going to extrude that one. So we got that. This flat corner here. Now we can select the rest of our lines on the front. Set this subdivision to 5. And let's do like 0.6, 0.7. And we got our corner piece. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I always click that one thinking it's an 40. Alright, so now we just got to position this one at 45 degrees. So we'll set this to 45. Oops. Come back to our move tool. And let's position it. So it is really big for our object, so we'll just shrink this down. Shrink this down. We might actually just need to offset this a little bit so that it fits the corner. Just gonna play around with this until we get a good size here on the corner. So we have something like that for our corner piece. When I zoom out, we can kind of see it clipping through there. So I'm just going to, oops, that's not the one. We'll drag this one forward a tiny bit. Now we got that corner piece there. Perfect. Go ahead and render this out quick. We can see we got our corner trim on that side. So now all we got to do, corner trim, name in our cubes, which one are, we'll just group these objects. We'll call these door trim. I always forget to name the objects. Copy and paste our corner trim. Rotate that 90 degrees. And now we will set This one. Sometimes it's just a bit tricky to get these pretty close to the same. Thinking something like that. And a lot of times too, if we're having this problem here with our objects clipping, we can just drag this a bit smaller and it will make it easier for us to get this a little bit closer. Perfect. So we got our we could tweak this all day, but we're just going to leave it. Going to drop that into door trim. All right, so now that we got our door trim working here, both sides, we have our opening, we have our windows, and everything. All right, so this one is getting a little bit long. I was going to do the chain and the floor in this video, but I think I should do it in the next one with the tower, just because the tower is a little bit easier to do than all of this bottom stuff. Has lots of little stuff you got to do for this. So we're going to end this part here. Part 1, modeling the base of the Town Hall 10 for within Clash of Clans, or within Cinema Authority in the Claim Clash of Clans. Part 2 is going to be the tower. And then if we don't have enough in part 2 for doing all the texturing and everything, we can do a super quick video on that one as well. Alright guys, I will catch you in the next part of this tutorial on how to do the tower, and we're going to cover the chains on the front and the little door. Alright guys, I'll see you soon. Talk to you guys all next time.